Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Player Prop Happy Hour for the Divisional Round games. I'm your host, as always, Josh Larky, joined with me, as always, by my co-host, Ryan Reynolds, and our new recurring guest, our data scientist, Ahaan Rungta. Today, we have each brought two player prop bets to the table, along with one long shot. We will discuss what the bet is, the best sports book for odds, and why we like this bet. Let's jump right into it, Ryan. Your first bet of the day.
Gentlemen, I can't believe I'm going to do this, but Baker Mayfield over 253.5 passing yards, minus 115 on DraftKings. Baker's beaten this number in 4 of his last 5 games. He's gone over 300 yards in 3 of those contests. You can't really run on Detroit, but you can throw on them. Detroit has given up at least 340 passing yards in each of their last 4 games. That includes 2 contests against Nick Mullins, where he threw for a staggering 807 passing yards. Bucs O-line's well positioned to mitigate Detroit's pass rush. Indoor game in January. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are a very good wide receiver duo, as we all know, both in solid matchups. This is more of a bet against Detroit's defense and a bet on Mayfield himself. But, Mayfield's hot, good matchup, shootout potential here. Mayfield over 253.5 passing yards, minus 115 on DraftKings.
Folks, that's Ryan Reynolds, NFL on Twitter. He's an adaptive analyst. Came into this season anti-Baker Mayfield, as I think most of us did. And you know what? The tables have turned. We're taking a Baker Mayfield over here. Ahaan, your first bet of the day.
We're staying in the same game. Ryan already covered most of the pitch for this. Detroit's pass defense, just not good. The run defense is good. The passing should be heavy in this one. You look at Baker Mayfield's attempts prop. It's 34.5 pass attempts. You know I like using the pass attempts to try to project total production because Vegas is sharp on the attempts props. Per 32 Mayfield throws this season, Chris Godwin is averaging 57 receiving yards. Now he gets arguably his best matchup yet. Give me Chris Godwin over 57.5 receiving yards, along with just Detroit not being able to defend the pass. Something they have tried to do recently is bracket number 1 options. They've still not done that to success, but they're at least they're trying it. And in the first playoff game, Cooper Kupp was bracketed a lot, which led to Puka Nacua just having his way. So that's why I'm going to the number 2 option here. If you look at the second option pass catcher on teams that have faced Detroit since week 13, Alvin Kamara. Yes, Alvin Kamara. It was the second option there. 58 receiving yards. Cole Kmet, 66 receiving yards. Then the wide receivers go Jerry Jeudy, 74. Hawkinson had 58 and KJ Osborne had 95 in the same game where Addison got hurt. Brandon Cooks had 60. Addison played and then got 57. And then most recently, Puka Nacua dropped 181. I'm not saying Chris Godwin drops 181 yards, but I'm saying this line of 57.5 is too low. You can get the over minus 115 over at DraftKings.
Ahaan Rungta on Twitter /X, our data scientist. Before I give my first bet of the day, we are sponsored by Betr, B-E-T-R. It's the new startup co-founded by Jake Paul. One thing that we all know he's very good at is marketing, is having successful product launches. Betr looks like it is very much on that track. It is a fantasy picks app. It rivals some of the ones that many of us have already heard of, like Underdog, Prize Picks. You might be like, why should I add another one to the portfolio? Well, let me tell you about Betr Picks promo. Promo code 33rd team, just 8 characters, no space, 33rd team. You get a 100% deposit match up to $500 for new users to Betr, B-E-T-R, Betr. Promo code 33rd team. Get that 100% deposit match up to $500. Ryan himself has already deposited $500, which means he now has $1,000 in his account. And at the end of this show, I will give out a 4-pick entry to 9x your entry fee for Betr. That way, if you want to deposit and you want some a little bit of a fantasy picks action for this week's games, you will have it. My first bet of the day, we're going to stick with that same game now. Lions, Buccaneers. We're going to go to the other side. I'm going to bet on Jared Goff over 270.5 passing yards, minus 114 on FanDuel. This is 275 yards everywhere else right now. It is still 270 on FanDuel. It's probably going to catch up soon. You beat the Buccaneers through the air, not on the ground, similar to how you beat the Lions. Earlier this year when these teams faced, Jared Goff had 353 passing yards in their 20-6 win. At home this year, Goff is 6-3 on the over. Overall this year, he's 10-8 to the over. Quarterbacks against the Buccaneers are just 9-9 on this number, which sounds a little scary. You might be like, well, Josh, why are we recommending this? If quarterbacks against Tampa Bay are 9-9, Turns out not all quarterbacks are created equal. Let's run through all 9 quarterbacks who were under. Justin Fields, Derek Carr in a game where he was injured, Desmond Ridder, Will Levis, Gardner Minshew, Bryce Young, Derek Carr again, Bryce Young again, and then Jalen Hurts last week without A.J. Brown. I think pretty much all those quarterbacks, aside from maybe Jalen Hurts out there, sound a whole lot different than Jared Goff and his surroundings. Everyone's healthy. He's got a great supporting cast. And I'm just going to bet on Jared Goff to once again have a great passing day at home. Over 270.5 passing yards, minus 114 on FanDuel. Ryan, this leads really nicely into your second bet of the day.
Yeah, I'm going to take David Montgomery under 57.5 rushing yards, minus 114 on FanDuel. You know, generally speaking, you throw on Todd Bowles' defenses to beat them. You can't really run on them. As we saw last week, Todd Bowles brings heat too. And, Jared Goff's a pressure-sensitive quarterback, so they're at least going to try that early. Montgomery didn't finish his first contest between these two teams, but the Lions won that game 20-6, yet they only ran for 40 yards on 22 carries. We also saw last week Vita Vea owns A-gap to the point. The answer to the question, how do we beat the brotherly shove, is Vita Vea is the answer to that question. Feels like Gibbs is a better opportunity in this matchup to break off chunk plays with his speed. Montgomery has gone under this number in 4 of his last 7, including 3 of his last 4. He only really blew this number out of the water against Denver recently, where Denver had the league's worst rush defense this season. So I think I don't love the line per se, but I do think this hits more often than not with Montgomery going under. And his rush attempts is juiced to like 140 already. So I went with the yards here.
I like that. A lot of action right now on that Lions-Buccaneers game. Ahaan, let's pivot to a different game. What is your second bet of the day?
Presumably the game of the weekend, Bills, Kansas City. I have a prop which for some reason is plus money on Caesars, which is your best price right now. It's starting to get juiced on some other books, but you could take this juice down to minus 125 if need be. Josh Allen, anytime touchdown. This should just never be plus money, just ever, in a game that means anything. Allen is Buffalo's number 1 option at the goal line, and last week he didn't even need to get a goal line opportunity to get the touchdown. But once he gets to the goal line, he's the number 1 option in the regular season. He was number 2 in the NFL in red zone carries at the position, number 1 in carries inside the 10 since coming off his bye in week 13. Buffalo's implied team total is 24. And when Buffalo scores at least 22, Allen has scored in 13 of 18 games overall this season. Or he scored in 13 of 18 overall and 9 out of 12 when Buffalo scores at least 22. Kansas City is a strong pass defense, but terrible against the run. So even if the opportunities are limited, once they get near the goal line, they're going to have to run around a little bit. It won't just be all just Josh Allen flinging it. James Cook has never in his life ever had a good profile for being a goal line back. It's not a coincidence that Allen keeps taking the burden of punching in those touchdowns. So you can get him plus or even money down to minus 125 if need be. But right now, your best price is on Caesars.
Love that. Josh Allen, anytime touchdown. Thank you, Ahaan. Before we get to our long shots and a better picks entry, my second bet of the day, it's going to be an under. You might be like, Josh, where are the shades? I went 0-2 on my picks last week. I don't deserve the shades this week. I took 2 overs. It is time to take an under. My hand is forced. And I really like Aaron Jones under 16.5 rush attempts. It's minus 110 on DraftKings. For starters, it's currently minus 130 on FanDuel. That's a massive, massive, massive odds discrepancy. So already we should just, in general, like that. Jones has at least 20 carries for at least 111 rushing yards the past 4 weeks. That sounds terrifying, but let's dig into the games, and then I think we'll understand why that came to be. A 33-30 win over the Panthers. The Panthers are a run funnel defense. They won the game. A 33-10 win over the Vikings. That's a blowout win. Again, rushing makes sense. A 17-9 win over Chicago. Low scoring affair. A little bit cold, a little bit windy in that game. That makes sense. And then this past week, the 48-32 win, it was really just a blowout against Dallas. They were up 27-0 at one point. We know that the Cowboys at this point have an undersized defensive front. They were taken advantage of by the Packers. This all makes sense. But now they face the Niners. They are 9.5-point underdogs. Game script's probably not in their favor. This is probably where the Cinderella story ends for the Packers. And just one running back this year actually went over 16.5 carries against the 49ers. Funny enough, that was Jerome Ford. I don't think you could find a funnier running back that has done it. He had 17 carries on the dot. He was just one over, and it was the 19-17 upset win for the Browns. I think the Packers lose this game. If you look at the money lines, everyone else out there seems to think the Packers most likely lose this game. Aaron Jones has had a historic workload for his standards these past 4 games, and I think it's time for him to get more pass game work, less rushing work. Aaron Jones, under 16.5 rush attempts, minus 110 on DraftKings. Ryan, it's time for some long shots.
I'm not a big touchdown better at all. Don't really believe in it, but we're doing long shots here in the playoffs, so I toe dipped into one here. Isaiah Pacheco, first touchdown, plus 750 on FanDuel. The reason for this is simple. Buffalo's linebacker group has been ravaged by injuries. Andy Reid's an excellent game planner. Like he did against Philadelphia in the Super Bowl last year, Pacheco saw an uptick in volume because that was where they had an advantage in that contest. He's seen more passing game work this year than he did last year by a wide margin. He saw 24 carries last week against the Dolphins. This line's plus 550 on ESPN Bet, so you're getting a decent value, even though, again, I don't really like betting these things. But if you're interested in a mild long shot, I think Pacheco is a good shot to score first here.
I like that. Isaiah Pacheco, first touchdown, plus 750 on FanDuel. Ahaan, let's hear your long shot.
I do believe in anytime touchdown, the anytime touchdown market, and it's mostly because it's worked out for me the second half of the season. So I'm going to stick to just going to the guys that are just underpriced, given their profile, their usage. Whenever I get a chance to fade an interception merchant at cornerback, I will do it. Whenever I get a chance to back one of the best athletes in the NFL, I will do it. We're getting to do both here. We're going to fade Charvarius Ward because he has been one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL this year. If you look at explosive play rate allowed, target rate allowed, yards per reception, etc., he will allow the big play. And the guy who is most qualified for the big play, as long as he is healthy on the field, is Christian Watson. Taking Christian Watson anytime touchdown. In his last 4 games before he got re-injured, he had 8 red zone targets and scored 4 touchdowns. Last week, it looked like he wasn't very involved. If you look at the box score, that's wrong. He still ran around half the routes, and even in that blowout script. And the reason the Packers were just getting wide open guys all over the place was because they were sending help every single time to Christian Watson downfield. Romeo Doubs was wide open all night. Romeo Doubs not getting wide open all night by his caliber. It's because Christian Watson kept getting doubled. In this one, he'll probably see a little more single coverage with Charvarius Ward, different looks. So as long as he is on the field, plus 380 should never be the price for someone of this caliber. I'm getting that over at Caesars. I think this closes at around plus 250. Earlier in the year, like about 7 weeks ago, Christian Watson was plus 140 for a touchdown. So buy the dip, plus 380 Caesars.
I like that. We've got a little Isaiah Pacheco first touchdown. We've got a little Christian Watson anytime touchdown. Ryan Reynolds is Ryan Reynolds NFL on Twitter. Ahaan Rungta is Ahaan Rungta on Twitter. Folks, it's time for the better pick'em slip. Promo code 33rd team, all one word, 33rd team. Get that 100% deposit match up to $500. I've got a pick 4 to 9x your entry. We're going to start with Baker Mayfield, more than 254.5 passing yards. Ryan detailed earlier in the show why we should like this line. And there's an analog in the picks market with that more. We're going to take Chris Godwin, more than 20.5 yards, longest catch. Ahaan already talked about why he likes Chris Godwin as well. Godwin's been more to this number in 11 of 18 games. Detroit's a pass funnel defense. It all just makes sense. We'll take Jared Goff, more than 275.5 passing yards. I already detailed why we should like Goff passing. And then we'll finish this off, the fourth one. Amon-Ra St. Brown, more than 24.5 yards, longest catch. Sometimes you can look at sports books compared to picks apps, and we see that the sports books just have this longest catch higher than 24.5. So already we're like, oh, that's pretty exciting. And then we actually dig into the numbers for more than 24.5 yards, longest catch. And we see that the Buccaneers allowed 39 completions of at least 25 yards this year. That's 2.3 per game. That was the 4th most overall. Amon-Ra St. Brown himself is 10-7 to this more. So we've got Baker Mayfield, more passing yards. Jared Goff, more passing yards. And then Chris Godwin and Amon-Ra St. Brown, more yards on their longest catch. 4 correlated picks to 9x your money. Folks, from myself, Josh Larky, from my co-hosts, Ryan Reynolds and Ahaan Rungta, from the 33rd team, from our sponsor, Better, promo code 33rd team. Thank you, everyone.